Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
There's just no place anywhere for that kind of behavior, those kinds of comments. It's disgusting.
3 members of the Coquitlam RCMP are facing dismissal for their participation in a private group chat allegedly filled with graphic racist and sexist comments. Plus, almost off to the races.
The NDP have rigged the election rules.
John Rustad has worked really hard to import American culture wars into British Columbia.
I think we have a real opportunity in British Columbia in this election to not give any party all of the power.
Party leaders trade barbs and plans before the start of the provincial election on Saturday. And decoding the songs of giants in BC.
If I could have one wish, it would be to know what are they saying to each other.
The push to understand whale language and the impact of more marine traffic.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. CBC News has learned disturbing details of an investigation into 3 RCMP officers in Coquitlam. A search warrant obtained by CBC details alleged racist and misogynistic conversations in a private chat. And as Susanna De Silva reports, there are questions about the organization's culture and what it means for some previous investigations. A warning for you, some of the details are offensive.
An officer at this RCMP detachment described the behavior of a dozen of his colleagues as atrocious, telling his bosses about harassment and text chats on police computers and private devices. A search warrant that is part of an internal investigation obtained by CBC News details one officer allegedly bragging in a private chat about using his taser on people who were black and they were unarmed, and in another chat saying, "I just racially profile pulled over a car." And the warrant details in-person conversations too, with an officer accused of saying Indigenous members of the community all have fetal alcohol syndrome and that they wouldn't go to the reserve because we're not going to help those people.
It's absolutely unacceptable. It's not a culture we expect or accept anywhere, frankly.
BC Solicitor General in charge of policing says he was briefed this morning.
There is a full internal disciplinary process underway, and I expect that will be thorough. And there may well be very serious consequences that flows from that.
Consequences not just for officers, but potentially triggering a review of the investigations they were involved in. About cases involving domestic violence and sexual assault, the warrant says one officer called a complaint stupid, that the victim was a dumb Mexican C-word, and that he was going to write it off without investigating further, and called another victim a dumb effing bitch, should have worn a mouthguard.
It's disgusting and unfortunately all too predictable.
This advocate says she knows of cases at this detachment she believes were mishandled.
We know that many RCMP members, we see that in our own work, harbor ideas that are not conducive to effective investigations and to caring about victims and survivors.
And while some experts say these actions don't represent most officers, the force is struggling.
They're competing with other police agencies for good people, and sometimes they hire people that shouldn't be police officers.
And Susanna joins us now with more. Susanna, what is happening to the officers right now?
Well, 3 of them have been suspended since June of 2021, but the Solicitor General couldn't say whether or not they are still being paid. So far, they're the only ones facing a code of conduct disciplinary hearing, but that was supposed to start this week, but it has now been delayed until March of next year. And there are concerns that the evidence from those private chat messages may in the end not be admissible because an RCMP officer who was supposed to submit a form to a judge about that evidence within 1 year said he, quote, forgot, and that didn't happen until 27 months later.
And what does the RCMP have to say?
Well, they commented late this afternoon, and they are calling the allegations shocking and disturbing, but that they wouldn't comment more specifically about the case, though they did say they have made changes so that the disciplinary process happens much quicker. Dan?
Susanna De Silva, thanks very much. Kamloops Mounties now say the massive fire that wiped out the Red Bridge early Thursday morning is arson. The The fire engulfed the 88-year-old span before it collapsed into the South Thompson River. The bridge was an important cultural site tying together the city of Kamloops with the Tecumloops Indian Band Reserve. Police are asking anyone who may have seen anything suspicious near the water to contact them. NDP leader David Eby and Conservative leader John Rustad pulled no punches, exchanging words before the provincial election officially begins on Saturday. The CBC's Katie DeRosa has more in the race and what voters might expect once the writ does drop.
One day before their election campaigns fire up, party leaders David Eby and John Rustad engaged in a war of words, starting with the NDP war chest.
The NDP have rigged the election rules. They actually have given themselves a $2 per vote subsidy for every vote they got in the last election every year. And on top of that, they got half of the money they spent in the last election back.
Rustad and the Conservative Party claim the NDP are starting $8.1 million ahead. Eby, meanwhile, says it's another case of Rustad drawing inspiration from former U.S. President Donald Trump.
John Rustad has worked really hard to import American culture wars into British Columbia. I think it's really unfortunate. I think that following the path of conspiracy theories and dividing people and Donald Trump politics is terrible.
All political parties get a per-vote subsidy from Elections BC. That's a result of reforms brought in 2017 under John Horgan's NDP, which banned big union and corporate donations. The subsidy means the BC NDP will get $1.6 million from Elections BC this year. The Greens will get about $500,000 and the BC Conservatives will get about $65,000. In the 2020 election, the BC Conservatives captured just 2% of the vote. Things changed last year when Rustad became leader after being booted from the BC United Caucus. Rustad and Eby will focus much of their campaign on the 52 ridings in Metro Vancouver, particularly the 10 ridings in Surrey. BC's second largest city has one new riding and others have been redrawn, setting the stage for hotly contested battlegrounds.
I am so excited about starting the campaign right here in the beautiful city of Surrey.
As for the BC Greens, leader Sonia Furstenau is predicting a minority government.
I think we have a real opportunity in British Columbia in this election to not give any party all of the power, to not have a winner-take-all outcome.
This election will have at least 22 independent candidates, 5 of them BC United incumbents, left politically orphaned after leader Kevin Falcon withdrew the party from the campaign. Eby and Rustad will begin their campaigns in Metro Vancouver, while Sonia Furstenau will kick off Saturday in Victoria. The Lieutenant Governor will sign the writ to dissolve Parliament around midday Saturday, thus kicking off the 28-day marathon leading up to voting day October 19th. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new report says salmon populations are declining across BC and the Yukon. The Vancouver-based Pacific Salmon Foundation's State of Salmon report covers all species of Pacific salmon. It says it found 70% of species are below their long-term average, with chum and steelhead struggling the most. There have been some signs of recovery, though, as the report also found coho in the Fraser region are seeing a resurgence. Thousands of people marched in Vancouver in the afternoon, urging the government and corporate leaders to take more action to address climate change. Yasmin Khanea spoke with the CBC's John Hernandez about the event organizers call a climate strike.
It was a very passionate crowd of climate protesters marching over the Cambie Street Bridge, marching through downtown to the art gallery. They were chanting, cheering, even singing along the way. Now, they started at the Vancouver City Hall. That's where we heard from a number of speakers, including 16-year-old Delarla reporter.
Because this is my future, really, and fighting for our future, my entire generation, it's really something that's imposing on a lot of us. So being here and being in support and representing my entire generation, it's an important subject for me.
Now, there are a few key goals from the climate strike. One is an end to big oil and gas projects here in BC. The other big issue they've taken aim at is the City of Vancouver's recent decision to reverse a ban on natural gas use in new homes. That ban was approved by the previous City Council back in 2020, but reversed this summer. Natural gas accounts for about 55% of carbon emissions in Vancouver.
And John, back in 2019, about 100,000 people attended the march. What was turnout like today?
Yeah, quite a bit smaller than that. Only a few thousand people at the height of the events today. Organizers do know that's a bit of a drop in the bucket compared to what we saw back in 2019, but they say the pandemic really changed how people gathered in large groups, and they really still do get a lot of engagement from supporters, and they say climate change will be top of mind for many British Columbians heading into the election.
With the election approaching soon, housing and affordability and health are really big issues for people, and they're right to care about those things. And I think something that we're hoping for is that they'll be able to see the connection to climate change, because climate is in each of those issues as well. Climate affects housing, climate affects affordability, and climate affects health.
So obviously some hopes that climate policy is addressed in the campaigns as we head towards that election.
Doris Madavi is taking the day off. Karis Hogg is here with a first look at the weather as we head into the weekend. And we're almost done summer, right?
Almost, yeah. We're almost done summer. Tomorrow is the last official day of summer. First day of fall is on Sunday.
Sunday.
Yes, so enjoy it while it lasts. We're looking at a weak atmospheric river actually coming into coastal BC, but further north than where we are here in Metro Vancouver. Central and northern coast is going to be a little bit wet starting tomorrow, although that rain is going to stay mostly up sort of in the north coastal area and a little bit over into the center of the province. The southern part of the province is going to remain dry through tomorrow. So let's take a look at some temperatures for tomorrow. Bella Coola, 15 and rain. Terrace, 14 and rain. Dees Lake, 13 and rain. So that's where all of that moisture is going to be tomorrow. Chance of showers here through Williams Lake into Fort St. John, but dry in the southern part of the province tomorrow. And just taking a look now for Metro Vancouver tonight and into tomorrow, a lovely evening again tonight. Sunny and 15. Overnight clear and 9. Tomorrow is when we might see a little bit of cloud creep in. And then on Monday is when we might see showers, but I'll have more details on that later in the show.
Sounds great. Thanks, Karis.
You're welcome.
Household items recovered from natural disasters across Canada are going to be displayed in New York as part of an exhibition for the UN's Climate Week. Among them are precious keepsakes from Heather McKay, whose West Kelowna home was wiped out during the McDougall Creek wildfire last year. She told CBC News what they mean to her.
Once we were allowed back on the property, we went and looked at our 3-story house, which took like 6 inches of ash. And you could just see my little Santa Claus and a little, I don't know, it was a little gourd salt and pepper shaker and a little peach dish. You could just see them poking out. And I've never wanted anything so much in my life. Before they didn't mean a lot, but then when that's all you have, they're very precious to me now. I keep them in little glass domes, protected in my house now. When people see those little things in my house and realize that's all we had after I'm 49 years old, and that's all I have from prior to that. And I just hope people see that it's a real problem that we're suffering. To be honest, one of the good things of the fire was bringing into perspective what's important. And when everything you own is gone and all you have left is that $20 worth of things, it really did make me change what I focus on with my money. And so I hope people realize what's important and things aren't it. And we don't bring anything into our home that does not spark joy. You will see a lot of pink because everything we had was in 6 inches of ash. And I just think about all the time and money I focused on things that are nothing. And I never want to be there again.
What factors will influence the way you vote on October 19th? Voters tell us their top BC election issues after this. The provincial election campaign begins on Saturday. And ahead of the vote on October 19th, we're asking what issues matter most to you. Here's what some voters told us in the riding of Vancouver Little Mountain.
Healthcare, schooling, and where our funding is going, all our taxpayers' dollars, because it seems like it's not going anywhere.
Housing. What else would it be? Well, there's obviously not enough of it. And the price, I mean, it's got to tick in every box, really, of making it totally unaffordable.
I guess money. Since, like, everything is going up in price, so it's, like, harder for, like, younger people like us to find places and stuff like that.
I think the average voter, if you ask them right now who's the head of the BC Conservatives, half would say Pierre Poilievre and think, oh, we're sticking it to Trudeau, when it's two entirely different things you'd be voting for.
That's the view in Vancouver Little Mountain. But what about Vancouver Island? Time to bring in Jason D'Souza. He is the host of CBC's All Points West. Jason, great to see you. You hear from voters every day. What issues are top of mind for them?
Well, Dan, I don't think it'll be a surprise to you or anyone across British Columbia to know that affordable housing really is one of the topmost issues for people right across Vancouver Island. But it's not just the actual cost of trying to buy a home. I think supply across the island has been such an intriguing point. And one of the most interesting ways to take a look at that, I find, is going municipality to municipality. So as we begin our election campaign coverage next week, one of the stories we're going to be bringing to listeners is actually taking a deep dive into the municipality of Oak Bay, where there's a very contentious project that's being proposed by a developer, taking this single-family lot, turning it into 13 townhouse complex. And as you can imagine, it's got some neighbors disgruntled. The developer says it's very much in line with the housing targets and the missing middle project that the NDP government has been proposing. So really excited to hear from all three candidates in Oak Bay, to hear not only their personal thoughts about that issue, but to also get their party's policy as well as it relates to affordable housing.
And election night is always going to be busy. It's always exciting. What other races on the island will you be watching over the coming weeks?
Yeah, well, I know you know, Dan, and the rest of us, that nail biter back in 2017, as Vancouver Island is no stranger to dramatic races. And of course, what happened in Courtney Comox still resonating today. I think Courtney Comox is going to be a fascinating race to watch. You still have Ronald Ray Leonard, the incumbent there. But BC Conservatives, I think they've had that riding circled on their map for quite some time. I don't think it's a coincidence that John Rustad will be at Black Creek tomorrow as part of his election campaign launch. And that is a riding that I think the Conservatives have felt that they may be able to wrestle from the NDP for some time now. Don't count out the Greens there as well. They've got a pretty healthy vote share over the last two elections. And of course, Dan, when you talk about the BC Green Party here on the island, you have to look at the potential fate of their leader, Sonia Furstenau, who is changing ridings, moving from Cowichan Valley. She is going to be attempting to win Victoria Beacon Hill, which is a fortress for the NDP. Currently, the incumbent, the MLA, is Grace Lohr, who is also the Minister of Family and Child Development. It's going to be a fascinating race to watch, of course, not only for Sonia Furstenau, but for the Green Party, whose other island candidate, Adam Olsen, popular MLA, has announced he won't be running. So all three parties looking at Vancouver Island, Dan, this battleground for BC election night. And yeah, too many ridings to count in terms of that drama, but those are two that I'm certainly going to be watching closely.
And we will do it as well. Jason D'Souza, the host of CBC's All Points West. Thanks very much, pal.
Thanks, Dan.
Security at Parliament Hill is tightened after recent confrontations, but one MP fears it's only a matter of time before someone is hurt. The safety risks to federal politicians when we come back. Security on Parliament Hill has been beefed up after a confrontation between protesters and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. But some MPs say they still do not feel safe. As Olivia Stefanovich explains, they're calling for better protection before someone gets seriously hurt.
Every time Pam Demoff leaves the House of Commons, the Liberal MP says she feels vulnerable.
I honestly worry that we're going to wait until someone is physically attacked or injured before something happens.
Tension between MPs and protesters hit a boiling point this week during the return of Parliament.
Will you vote a non-confidence tonight if it came up? Corrupted bastard. Want to say something?
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh confronted two men after being followed and taunted.
Was it you? No. You sure? If it was me, I'd admit it, buddy. Was it you or not? If it was me, I'd admit it. What'd you say then?
The Parliamentary Protective Service says it's responding, pushing demonstrators back, adding more officers, escorting MPs to and from the House of Commons, making sure anyone who doesn't work in Parliament slips through.
Well, I don't think it's been adequate at all. People have a right to protest, but they don't have the right to intimidate and harass.
But MPs are still being targeted outside the secure vicinity.
They're bullies.
Demoff is now asking the Sergeant-at-Arms to create larger protection zones for MPs where demonstrators can access.
I certainly lift up the right to protest, but all rights have limitation.
An idea supported by many of her colleagues.
There are times that, I really don't feel safe.
Political violence is happening right here in Canada every day at every level of government, and that's why we've got to meet the challenges head on.
But some protesters worry safe zones could cause backlash.
When people don't have a voice, they get extreme, and they figure that they're going to do whatever it takes to get attention to their cause.
For now, the Parliamentary Protective Service says it's monitoring threats and unfolding events, ready to intervene as required. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
General Motors is recalling nearly 450,000 SUVs and pickup trucks because of a warning light fails to display when brake fluid is low. Nearly 40,000 Canadian vehicles are affected in the recall. You can check if your car or vehicle is affected by visiting the GM website and searching its identification number. Notification letters will also be sent out at the end of October. GM will send a free software update to vehicles, or you can book an appointment with a GM dealership. Low brake fluid can reduce braking performance and increase the risk of a crash. Canada's academic community is expressing worry after Ottawa announced more cuts to international student permits this week. As Deanna Sumanak-Johnson reports, experts argue the enrollment loss could impact Canada's reputation as an education leader.
Once a foreign student himself, Madi Basiri now runs a popular tech platform that matches international students with Canadian institutions. He says the process has gotten harder.
Now, I wouldn't know if I'm going to Canadian colleges. Do I get my postgraduate work permit? Do I not get it? How the list is doing?
Uncertainty amped up by Wednesday's announcement from Canada's Minister of Immigration.
First of all, we will be lowering the target for study permits by 10%.
Also newly added, restrictions around permits for master's and PhD students and proof of language proficiency. The announcement built on a move made by the government in January to drastically reduce the number of international students Canada takes in, saying the institutions were relying too much on foreign student tuitions and that those students were straining Canada's already scarce housing market.
I would say that the measures that we've taken up to now are working.
But some say the moves are also endangering Canada's reputation as the hub for the world's best and brightest.
By putting more restrictions and more complications around applications for master's and PhD students, we're telling the world we're wavering in our commitment to attracting these highly talented students who we need to drive our economy in the future.
New changes also affect Canada's colleges, where postgraduate work permits will now only be possible for students in programs linked to high-demand labor markets.
We're very concerned about this change at a time when our country, more than ever, needs the makers, the builders, the growers.
While institutions are asking where the shortfall in their funding will come from, Madi Basiri says he hopes there won't be more reductions and that new international students hoping to come to Canada can enjoy what he did, stability. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Israel's military says it has killed a top member of Hezbollah and 10 other commanders of the militant group. Hezbollah has not confirmed the deaths caused by an airstrike in southern Beirut. The latest escalation is heightening concerns of a widening regional war. Abby Kuavasan has more on what we know so far.
Red lines going up in flames between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, despite desperate calls for restraint from the United States and the United Nations. It has been a day of intense exchanges of fire. The IDF confirmed it has carried out what it calls a targeted strike in Beirut. Smoke could be seen over Dahia, a residential southern suburb of the Lebanese capital, which is a Hezbollah stronghold. Israeli media is now reporting that Ibrahim Akil, a prominent Hezbollah military leader, was the target. Now, overnight, the IDF says it struck more than 100 Hezbollah positions inside Lebanon. All of this part of an intensification in violence this week. On Tuesday and Wednesday, communication devices belonging to members of Hezbollah exploded across Lebanon, killing dozens and injuring thousands more, including civilians. Israel has not commented, but it is widely being blamed for the sophisticated operation. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, vowed retribution yesterday, and today the group fired at least 140 rockets into Israel. On Thursday, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant said there was now a new phase to the war, the northern front with Lebanon. He confirmed that IDF troops are being moved there. There are concerns of a possible limited ground incursion as Israel appears to be taking the fight straight to Hezbollah. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has already called on the parties to fully implement the 2006 UN resolution to end hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. But deep concern right now that after 11 months of trading fire almost daily, the conflict is about to erupt into an all-out war. Abby Kualasan, CBC News, Berlin.
What are whales talking about when they sing to each other? Coming up, we'll meet the marine researcher who has dedicated her life to finding out. You'll want to see this. 4 hours from Prince Rupert, researchers are working to decode whale songs. Janie Ray dreams of understanding their language to decipher what the massive mammals are saying to each other. But as Radio-Canada's Camille Vernet reports, the arrival of more maritime traffic could impact the whales and the people who study them.
Whenever I hear whales communicating, if I could have one wish, it would be to know what are they saying to each other.
Janie Ray has been living with whales for almost 20 years. Each year, she follows their migration and travels here to Douglas Channel on the north coast of British Columbia. This magnificent show is a regular event here.
It touches my heart every single time I see them. It never changes.
By taking pictures, the team will try to identify the orcas.
I think they are residents.
As nice as it is to see the orcas, Janie Ray wants to find out who they are by taking a listen on the water.
Just by listening, you can document who is in the area.
Every clan has its own language, and some groups have their own dialects.
A family spends their entire life together. The oldest female is passing on her acoustic tradition or dialect onto her offspring, and that is then being passed on to the next generation.
To figure out what the whales are saying, researchers need to listen to the ocean. This device, covered with algae, is a hydrophone. It records the symphony of aquatic life, fish, boats, and marine mammals over a 10-kilometer radius.
It's also a great non-invasive way to study whales. You can listen for whale calls 24/7. You don't have to be out in the water. You can have the signal transmit back to your lab.
It's here, perched on the rocks of Finn Island, on the territory of the Gitgat First Nation, that Janie Ray works to decode the language of the whales.
So the whales that we were with, these are the calls they were making, and the hydrophone was picking up those calls.
And when whales vocalize, it's music to Janie's ears.
He's actually composing something here.
Male humpback whales start to sing in the fall. Their songs, like the human language, evolve with time.
So every year that we record these whales singing, every year it's different. They're always changing and evolving this song. So it keeps us on our toes. And then that song just is being passed on right down the entire coast of BC. And then as they all start to migrate towards Mexico and Hawaii, somehow those changes are taken with them and those changes are passed on throughout the whole community of the Pacific humpback population. But we just don't know how that's happening.
She hopes to solve this mystery with the recordings. But this quiet environment is about to change. In 2025, an LNG terminal will begin operations in Kitimat, located at the end of this channel.
That is the pass that these LNG tankers will be coming through.
Every 2 days, an LNG tanker will cross the horizon to transport LNG to Asia. The same place where for almost 20 years, Janie has been collecting data on the passage of ships and marine mammals.
And then that allows you to look at the overlap of whales and vessels, which is really important when you're looking at the interaction between vessels and how whales react to the presence of vessels, either the noise or just the actual physical presence of a vessel.
Whales use sound to communicate, find each other, and forage food.
So sound is everything to a whale. They're using sound in every way that we might use sight.
In addition to noise pollution, an increase in shipping activity could increase the risk of collisions, and those can be fatal.
We know these whales as individuals, and we're seeing the impact of this to the individual level, and we're really afraid of what this is going to do to the population level once these tankers come through.
Today, the team is fixing a hydrophone.
It's a harsh environment. I think we just go where the whales are, where people want to learn more about the acoustic ecosystems, and that's the environment it is.
By recording the sound of whales, it is possible to know their position.
We can actually follow that whale, and we start to see the track, and we realize, oh my gosh, we're documenting whale trails.
This hydrophone is part of a network of 20 along the west coast.
So we reached out to some communities or NGOs that we knew had some hydrophones in the water. We knew there was a number of coastal First Nations that wanted to put hydrophones in the water. So we reached out to these people and we said, hey, how would you feel about joining a collaborative project where we all work together to better understand the acoustic traditions of whales, but also how they're using the entire coast of BC.
This network makes it possible to compare quiet area and noisier ones, such as the Vancouver area, home to the southern resident killer whale. To protect them, the Port of Vancouver started the ECHO project.
In 2023, 87% of the vessels coming to and from the Port of Vancouver participated in our underwater noise reduction initiatives, which include slowdowns or moving away from key foraging areas. And thanks to their participation, the noise was cut in half.
This initiative is voluntary and targets key areas where noise and whales overlap.
We're also seeing reductions in air emissions and the reduction in strike risk.
LNG Canada says it's taking all necessary measures to avoid collision with whales and limit noise. They promise to use onboard surveillance and travel at the speed of 18 kilometers an hour from July to October. In the Douglas Channel, the sound research work continues.
So we've got a signal.
With this data, Janie Ray hopes to determine whether the measures put in place are sufficient.
And we can finally get to answering that question, how does sound impact the quality and the lives of whales, and how does it impact their ability to forage or communicate or pass on acoustic traditions between each other and families?
On this island, where the sound of waves and the song of the whales blends, Janie Ray preserves the sound heritage of the West Coast whales. And as long as there are ears to listen, she hopes to better understand and protect them. Camille Vernet, Radio-Canada, on Finn Island near Hartley Bay.
Amazing. And they're loud, too.
Yeah, I like the low one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it like really kind of echoes.
Mm-hmm. Didn't expect whale sounds today from us, did you, folks?
No,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
No.
But that was very
What that means for your weekend weather right now.
Well, you know, speaking of Prince Rupert, I'll get to some weather that's happening up there coming in tomorrow. Here on the South Coast, just another beautiful September, just wonderful day, warm in the sun, fresh in the shade. But there is going to be a change in the weather. It was dry over the past 6 hours for the province, but there is a weak atmospheric river that is rolling in. And stopping it here Saturday, sort of afternoon, is when we're going to see a lot of precipitation in this Prince Rupert, Terrace, Bella Coola, Bella Bella area. Upwards of 100 millimeters of precipitation could fall by Sunday there with this weak atmospheric river. A little bit of precipitation, too, through the central north. The central south and south coast will remain dry through tomorrow. However, taking a look at some temperatures, actually first I want to show you this stronger atmospheric river is coming in on Monday. But for the weekend, it's not going to be too wet for most of the province. And looking at temperatures for tomorrow, not too shabby. 17 in Williams Lake, 23 in Kamloops, 22 in Atrocious. Temperatures come down a little bit for Sunday, and then on Monday they come back up and actually quite warm in Kamloops, 25, Atrocious, 24. And then looking at the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver, tomorrow is the last official day of summer, and it looks like a pretty nice one. Mix of sun and cloud, 18 degrees, and then a chance of showers for the first day of fall, 40% chance of showers. Monday, also 40% chance of showers, might see a little more sun, and then maybe on Wednesday a few showers as well. But that's a ways from now.
There
so
you
we'll
go.
See what happens.
We've got time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karis.
You're welcome.
Well, it is time for part 3 of our Creator Network series, Cream of the Crop, focusing on Okanagan cherry pickers. This time, we hear how seasoned fruit pickers expand on the spirituality of food and its presence across our lives.
We got like a 2-week break between apple and cherry, so 2-week breaks. And then apple picking since the start of September. It just feels like that we're so disconnected with this field of work. And we live in illusion. Once things isn't plastic, it's in pristine condition, untouched for your sweet tongue to devour. But like ants touch that and like dirty hands, I'ma tell you.
You know, maybe at one point in society, people who provided food for others would be incredibly important people. Between you and the ladder and the tree, all of the movements, it's like a dance. Because I think it's important not to be too rigid. Like pick with that sort of integrity, like, you know, where I value the fruit, and I like to pick fruit with love. So that, you know, there's a good energy in the fruit. You know, I always sort of think about the people who are gonna enjoy the fruit that I pick.
There is the enchantment of being outdoors in the first place. You know, like all by myself here, it's quiet. Some people do this line of work just to make ends meet. Some people do this work because they like to travel. Some people do this work because they don't got a choice like me. They got a family to feed and they gotta go on with their lives. Whatever the reason you're here for, every single apple is picked single-handedly, one by one. And that hasn't changed for 10,000 years, as long as people have gathered fruit. But it is how we grow it now that has changed.
Once you get down and down through the levels of like where these things come from, you end up with the earth. And this is where things kind of crumble, because before that apple are like classified, standardized by redness, by ripeness. Well, the earth is just doing its own thing. You see that all these classified things and perfect things that we are used to buy for ourselves starts so imperfect and so dirty. That's really is the illusion, that everything's come that sometimes don't, and who knows if the fruits are gonna grow next year. It's just dirt and trees, so I feel it's good for everyone to put their hand in dirt sometimes and feel that, like, yeah, we are the nature, too.
A bird was rescued during wildfires in the Shuswap last year. Coming up, we're going to show you its release back into the wild. Stick around.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox. CBC returns as the exclusive media partner of Splash, Arts Umbrella's annual gala and art auction, October 5th. The event supports children and youth programming through arts education. For tickets and information, visit artsumbrella.com. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
The Grizzlies NBA franchise is celebrating its 30th anniversary this season, and to pay tribute to its BC roots, the team is bringing back a classic edition of its uniform.
Players will be wearing the home white Vancouver Grizzlies uniform this season. It's a throwback to the team's time here from 1994 to 2001. They were named after the Bears indigenous to our province.
Yeah, we have Grizzlies here.
That's right.
Tennessee? Not so much.
Not so much.
Not that we could find. There we go. It's okay.
We went looking. We didn't see
Deeply,
any.
clearly.
Yes.
After spending more than a year in the care of the Alberta Institute for Wildlife Conservation, I should say, an American kestrel rescued during the wildfires in the Shuswap has now been released back into the wild.
Take a look.
This kestrel came into our care after she was found by concerned citizens who were fleeing the fires in the Shuswap last year. So that was August 2023. When she came in, she had pretty severely singed feathers, particularly her flight feathers. Our veterinarian assessed her and determined that all she really needed was a molt. Now, that might seem easy. Some birds do just shed their feathers when they're damaged, but raptors, like a kestrel, only shed them once a year. And so she stayed with us pretty much, well, for over a year, 386 days it took. She spent most of her time in care, not able to fly because her flight feathers were so damaged.
Ready? Yeah.
The release was done by two of our amazing, super experienced volunteers who've been working with us for a very long time and have done tons of releases, and they volunteered to take her on that big, huge journey, and it was a truly special release. When she was out of the vehicle, she let them know that she wanted out. She was quite vocal. She stopped on a log about 10 feet away from the volunteers and continued her vocalizations, assessed the area for a little bit, and then she took off over the lake. It really is truly rewarding. Caring for these long-term patients is a lot of work. It really takes the public support through donations to help us, and the public can donate at aiwc.ca.
Nice.
Thank you for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on the CBC News app, on YouTube, or on our website at cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. So please join us then.
Goodbye.